It all starts with Kyouko Hori, who is considered a beauty and an exemplary student at school. Outwardly she is ideal, but after lessons she quickly changes. She sometimes puts on glasses, cleans the house, cooks, and takes care of her younger brother Soda. This is her hidden side that few people know about. One day after class, Hori accidentally meets Izumi Miyamura, a classmate of hers whom she knows only through rumors. Miyamura seems unsociable at school and does not pay attention to his peers. However, outside of school he is completely different. He brought home her younger brother, who got lost, and the girl didn't even recognize Miyamura. He had a lot of piercings and tattoos and was quite friendly. They begin to get to know each other in more detail and spend time together. Through communication, Hori and Miyamura reveal their true identities to each other, realizing that they are both hiding their true selves from those around them. Their friendship begins to grow stronger, and they discover that they can be themselves in front of each other without external masks. Thus, it lays the foundation for their relationship and demonstrates how two different worlds can collide and create a special bond. Hori and Miyamura were walking down the street and talking about music. It turned out that Hori does not listen to music. The girl came home and her mother was waiting for her, which Hori did not expect. Mom asked about Hori's new friend, and she and her brother talked about him in detail. When she asked about his name, Hori realized that she only knew his last name. The whole next day she followed the guy and tried to find out his name, but was embarrassed to approach him directly. The girl even spied on him in the locker room to hear someone say his name, which the guys did not understand and condemned the girl. However, Hori failed and never learned his name. When Miyamura came to visit them again, he met her mother. They talked for a while until Hori walked away and did not participate in the conversation. Then my mother went to work, and my friends were left alone with my brother. The guy mentioned that Hori's mom called him by his first name and that Hori was acting strange that day. Then she had difficulty telling why she behaved this way. Miyamura laughed and simply wrote his name for her. The next day, Hori stayed late at school, helping the school board with paperwork and reports. She even developed dark circles under her eyes from fatigue, which made her friends worry. Having finished work, the girl came and took the box of documents from Hori, after which she was able to calmly go home. While running, the girl collided with Miyamura and scattered all the papers. She packed everything in a hurry, and the guy helped her, but she forgot one piece of paper. Because she was in a hurry, the girl ran, Miyamura tried to help and she ran away. The next day, in the corridor, the guy saw a crowd of classmates and said that Hori was being scolded for unfinished work. The head of the council scolded her for missing the budget document, but Hori said that she had given everything and did not know where the document was. She had already been forced to apologize to him and was disgraced in front of everyone. Then Miyamura came up, hit this guy out of anger and simply gave him this document. He told everyone what happened last night, for which that girl felt ashamed, and she realized what she had done. Hori was cleared of all charges and apologized for the incident. The next day, Miyamura was playing ping pong with Toru Ishikawa and they were discussing Hori's birthday and what to get her. Miyamura thought about the gift for a long time and gave her CDs with his favorite songs. Then they talked about the future and what would happen after school. Both were very afraid that their paths would diverge and they would stop communicating. Izumi always seemed strange and lonely, as if not from this world. It started in childhood and continued until high school. But everything changed when Hori appeared. She is the only one who approached him and understood him. She broke through the wall that surrounded him, and he began to trust and love her, even if he couldn't understand why. He also made a best friend, Toru Ishikawa, thanks to Hori. Kyouko and Miyamura continue to be friends and spend time together, while Toru, who is in love, is quietly angry, although he does not hide it. The guys still continue to be friends and often talk about Hori. Although Miyamura and the girl are friends, their friendship gradually turns into love, and many people notice this. But Izumi and Kyouko themselves do not admit this and lie to themselves. One day, Hori was sitting and drinking a drink when Ayasaki sat down next to her and asked about their relationship. She wanted to become Miyamura's girlfriend. Hori, even though they are friends, still did not allow her to do this. But Ayasaki was not going to give up. In the evening, Izumi came to Kyouko while her brother went to play football and her mother was at work. After watching the horror movie, my mother wrote that she would be late. They realized that they would be alone for a long time, but they just started talking. Then they remembered how the kids measured their hand sizes at school, and Miyamura remembered that the girl only had 2 phalanges on her fingers. To make sure, he asked to show his hands. At this moment, they leaned their hands against each other and squeezed them. The girl suddenly said that she loved him, but quickly got out of the situation. Izumi, like Hori, was very embarrassed. The next day, Miyamura came to school with a bruise on his face and said that he had gotten into a fight with Toro. Kyouko was furious at the news, and when Toro arrived beaten, she was surprised. They said that it happened by accident. They simply did not calculate the force. But it turns out that they fought because of Hori. The girl did not say about it, but they told her friend and asked her not to talk. Thuro was walking down the street near the school, and a stack of leaves fell from above. From the window there was a green-haired girl with glasses. Her name was Sakura. He brought her a paper, they met and began to communicate. A little later, the girl entered their company with Miyamura, Hori and other students. Meanwhile, Kyouko and Izumi sat and did their homework. Each time they became closer and closer to each other, and more they were equally strongly attached. As they sat, Miyamura revealed that he had met a friend from middle school, which surprised Kyouko since he had virtually no friends. Koichi Shindo was retained for the second year. In middle school, he was an acquaintance who interacted with Izumi in his own way, and so they grew closer and began to communicate. At first, Shindo's friends were against their friendship since Izumi was strange, but Koichi said that they were just angry that now he was spending less time with them. Then Miyamura entered high school and their paths diverged. An old friend saw him with Kyouko and assumed they were dating. But Izumi started to deny it, but Koichi didn't seem to believe it. Few people believed that Hori and Miyamura were not dating. Ever since Shindu reappeared, Izumi had been thinking more and more about middle school and the beginning of their friendship, causing him to become even more thoughtful than usual. It turns out that Kyouko is sick, but she didn't think about it and just went to school. But her younger brother stopped her and forced her to go to bed and get treatment, and he left. The girl had a high fever and her mother was not at home, so her brother called Miyamura to look after Kyouko. When he arrived, the girl thought that it was her imagination, but he was nearby and treated her. Kyouko remembered how, as a child, her mother was never there for her when she was sick. Hori was used to doing everything herself and was independent. This time, with hysteria in her voice, she asked where Miyamura would go after offering help. But Izumi took the girl by the hand and proved that he would not go anywhere until she asked. She calmed down, lay down on the bed and began to fall asleep. At that moment, Miyamura decided to confess his love for her and said that he had loved her for a long time, and this news immediately subsided her fever. She didn't expect this answer. While Hori was recovering, she thought a lot about his words and did not understand what was happening to her. In fact, she simply loved him too. After school, her brother came home and over lunch told her that he saw Miyamura with some girl who looked the same age as him, and she was from a different school. Kyouko was hurt by this and thought about it all evening. The girl tried to justify him and calm herself down, but it didn't work. The next day she came to school and tried not to catch his eye. He found out that she came to school and avoided him, but he decided that it was because of his confession. Izumi found her near the lockers and spoke to her. Hori immediately asked about the girl Miyamura was leading on his arm. He said it was Shindo's girlfriend and she twisted her ankle. Then they decided to help her get there. And this was the honest truth, but Hori reacted to this very emotionally, beat him with books, screamed and left. When she came home and started doing housework, Miyamura later came to her and brought books. Hori asked her brother to tell her that she was not at home, but Izumi had already entered and heard her voice. They both ended up awkwardly apologizing to each other and talking about everything that was bothering them. And Hori admitted that she heard his confession, but he knew about it, he just didn't expect an answer from her. And at that moment a man with gray shaggy hair and a cigarette comes in. Kyouko jumped up and was surprised by his arrival. It was her father. He acted imposingly, sat down next to Izumi and began talking to him while Kyouko prepared food for him. Izumi felt very awkward and at that moment the man asked Kyouko about their relationship. The girl with difficulty but confidently declared that they were in a relationship, but this did not concern the man. Here the conversation was interrupted by Kyouko's mother, who came home and was also surprised by this guest. Toru still loved Hori, but he understood that she herself did not have feelings for him and decided to stop hoping for something. But then he found out that Izumi and Hori are now dating, but he still decided not to contact them anymore and now they are only friends. But Sakura looked at Toru many times and she really liked him, but she did not consider herself worthy of him. And she even almost quarreled with Ayasaki's best friend. Many at school thought she was ugly, especially compared to the beautiful Ayasaki. But she remembered that she still called Sakura beautiful and always supported her, so friendship was more important to her and she made peace with her friend. At the end of the school day, Izumi and Kyouko were walking together and many already knew that they were dating. Nearby, Toru was talking with his friends and saw a couple. Izumi didn't know what his reaction would be and was afraid that his friend would reject him. But he just said to forget about it and they are still friends. One day Miyamura came to visit Hori again. He won't even notice how he stayed there until late and was offered to spend the night. There was nowhere to spend the night, so he was placed with Hori's father. In the room, his father asked him why Miyamura loves Hori. He replied that she does not judge by appearance and she was the first to take the initiative. But the father did not wait for an answer and fell asleep. In the morning, when the couple left school together, they were seen by other guys who were also heading there. Everyone was very surprised that they left the same house together, and at school everyone already knew that the popular beauty Kyouko Hori was dating such a closed and strange Miyamura, and this was discussed on every corner. Izumi noticed this more than once. He was embarrassed by such words, and he often wondered how Hori would react to all this. So that Hori would not be as embarrassed as he expected, the guy cut his hair. When he came to school like this, everyone was shocked to see him. Sometimes they started taking pictures, and many did not even recognize him. Later, during a visit to Hori's house, his father also did not recognize him, and his brother and mother were surprised by the changes. He then received a call from Shindo, and Izumi had to take the elevator down to meet him. Shindo was also shocked. At school, Izumi and Toru were talking about how everyone seemed to have gotten used to Miyamura's new image. They noticed a girl in the window who looked straight at Izumi and then walked away, but no one had any idea who she was. In the corridor, the girl met Hori and directly asked if she was really Miyamura's girlfriend. Hori replied with contempt that he did, and the girl ran away. She then tracked down Miyamura and started stalking him. When the guy noticed this, he turned to her and asked her the reason for spying on him. But the girl simply asked about when he would leave Kyouko, and it was very strange. After all, the next day she followed him at every break, and even when Kyouko was nearby, the girl still followed them. Hori turned around and aggressively asked about the reason for the surveillance, which even scared the girl. But then she began to hug Kyouko and confess her love. Miyamura and the girl began to share Kyouko in the corridor, and then the guy took the girl to class. Then it turned out that she lives next door to him. Over time, they even became a little closer as they got to know each other better. In the evening, Miyamura visited Kyouko again, and he and her father watched a movie. Kyoko's father didn't like the movie because it was a horror movie. Then he went out to smoke and the couple was left alone. They talked a little about their relationship, and even the topic of intimacy came up. Their conversation then led to the guy reaching out to the girl to kiss her. But then the father enters the room and realizes that he has disturbed them. Kyouko angrily kicks him and threatens to repeat the scene from the movie. Ever since Izumi and Kyouko started dating, Yuki began to spend more time with Toru. One day they were carrying boxes of trash and Sakura came around the corner, and it so happened that they crashed into the girl and stained her clothes. Yuki and Toru apologized many times, and the guy even ran to bring her a uniform. During this time, Sakura learned that Yuki and Toru were not in a relationship. At first, Yoshikawa was not embarrassed by this question, but when she realized what was happening, she immediately sank. When the guy came running, he brought his uniform since there was no other one. The next day, Sakura returned his clothes and gave him cookies, saying that she had prepared too many. The guy happily took it. He thought it was delicious. So they began to get closer and spend more time together. Yuki noticed this, but did not stop them. She always gave her best to everyone, but not to herself. Sakura also gave her a cookie as a thank you for her help. Yuki took them with difficulty, but did not show it. The next day, she approached Izumi and asked about her cooking skills. She also wanted to bake cookies, but didn't know how to do it. Izumi knew how to cook and said that no one succeeds the first time. Then, after a long time, she baked cupcakes, but they burned. She did not want to give them to Thor, as he would mock her. Ishikawa Toru then approached them and tried the cupcake without question. He said it wasn't that bad and expected her to make progress. Izumi went to visit relatives for 5 days. Hori and Izumi would not see each other for 5 whole days. They thought it would be easy, but they suffered from separation. Hori acted strangely all the time and saw him everywhere. Sometimes she even forgot that Miyamura was not around, and out of habit, she served him a portion of food or bought milk for 2. When the day of his arrival arrived, she took off and ran to meet him. Even in the elevator, before he even reached her floor, Hori threw herself into his arms and they hugged tightly. One rainy day, they met at Hori's house to watch a movie. Kyouko remembered how the girls advised her to behave more politely and watch less horror films in front of him. They said that they were repulsed when a beautiful girl looked at maniacs with interest. And while watching the movie, she faked fear and pretended to be different from her usual self, but she couldn't do it. She thought she had ruined everything, pushed him away and went to her room to cry. He noticed this and told Hori that he loved her for who she was. The girl was touched by this and felt the same. They started hugging and expressing their love for each other, and at the end they kissed. Miyamura had a dream in which he saw himself when he was in middle school, talking to himself. He tells how in the future he will meet worthy people and even a girl. Just let Miyamura Jr. not wish for death. Then he wakes up and doesn't remember his dream, but really wants to see Hori. At this point, Ayasaki talks about the guy she loves and how he is weak, although he tries to appear strong. He was special to her in every way. These two have the same interests. For example, books, they both love to read them. Therefore, Kakeru Sengoku often shared books with her and Sakura, and once he even showed the girl his home library. One day at his house, a girl asked what he would do if the world ended, and he replied that he confessed his sympathy for her and she reciprocated. Izumi decided to try to behave more decisively and boldly, and in some cases even rudely. At school, This caused strange feelings among his classmates because this was not his usual behavior as a guy, and even with Hori, he tried to behave more harshly, which she liked. But because of this, various rumors arose. Then Yoshikawa approached them and said that someone had confessed his love to her. She wanted to politely refuse this man, but she needed a plan. They decided that Toru would introduce himself as Yuki's boyfriend. So the two of them went together to give the answer together, holding hands. Yoshikawa was very embarrassed because she was in love with Toru, but did not show it. When they arrived, they saw what a handsome guy, whose name was Ake Yanagi. They did their job and went their separate ways. It later turned out that this guy had very poor eyesight and Yuki assumed that he had confused her with someone. But in fact, he liked her for a very long time. One day, Hori decided to braid Miyamura's hair. All the girls were delighted with her boyfriend's hairstyle and this made Hori jealous. All the way when they walked home, she walked angry but tried not to show it. On the way they met 3 guys and they recognized Miyamura. They came up and started insulting him and saying terrible things about Izumi, but he just stood there. Then Kyouko approached them, looked menacingly and scared the villains, and they left. Now Miyamura felt protected, which he did not have as a child. The next day they went to the store together and chased 3 hooligans along the way. They were incredibly afraid of Kyouko after this incident and then saw her looking for Miyamura, who was waiting for her from the store. Every day Miyamura became more and more confident in communicating with Hori and everyone noticed this. Just like his abusers even began to reach out to him. Sometimes Izumi could even allow himself to treat Hori rudely, but he did not want to. Only Kyouko wanted it. Hori was a hot-tempered, jealous and active girl, although she was shy. And Miyamura was quiet, calm and kind. But he fulfilled almost all her requests and even almost gave up friendships with guys because of her jealousy. Yuki gradually became closer to Akane, but continued to love Toru. In her personal life, she often had conflicts due to her habit of pleasing everyone and giving up her desires. But one day she lied to Sakura that she was still dating Toru, although this was not the case. But she loved Toru, so she talked to her friend Ayasaki and she promised not to tell anyone about it. Due to problems with her personal life, Yuki pretended to be sick and stayed home for a week. They called and wrote to her repeatedly, but she did not answer. Because of the conversation with her sister, Yuki finally decided to check her phone and stop running away from her problems. There were messages on the phone from Toru and he reported that Sakura confessed her love to him. The next day, Yuki came as if nothing had happened, but Toru called her to the roof to talk. There he said that Sakura simply confessed and did not expect an answer, because I thought it was Yuki and Toru in a relationship and she didn't want to get involved and just confessed. And Toru simply confirmed that they were supposedly in a relationship, so as not to deny Sakura's feelings. Yuki was relieved that everything worked out and they didn't become a couple. And at the same time, it's hard that she is to blame for the fact that Sakura and Toru are not together. However, the two are still close and their intimacy is growing. At the council, Ayasaki and Kakeru talked about Sakura and her behavior. She seemed to become more joyful and happy. When she came to them, Kakeru asked her about her life and news, although she tried to avoid the conversation and said that everything was fine. Then she looked out the window and saw Toru and Yuki there, walking and fooling around together. This touched her and made her feel a little sad. When Kakeru got an answer from her, she said that Toru had refused her love even before she had time to confess. And the girl began to cry a lot and even fell to the floor in hysterics. The guys sat and talked about how many brothers and sisters they have, and some were the only child in the family. But what surprised them most was the Shuiira family. He was usually very energetic and cheerful, and it even scared some people. But at home he was calm, like his sister Motoko, who was different from all the other younger siblings. Toru came to visit them and was amazed by their relationship, how calm they were at home. But still they showed no affection towards each other. Motoko failed to enroll in an oriental school and became depressed. Although she studied well and her grades allowed her to do so, the teachers simply laughed at her. Shu promised to put these idiots in their place for bullying her. This surprised her because she thought he hated her. And in general, talking about problems was atypical for her. Just like Shu himself said similar things, but he saw real emotion and trust in her. In the meantime, he asked Hori to improve the girl's subjects and support her. Hori talked to her and said that Motoko's brother loves her very much because he helps her. They just have a relationship in which love is expressed differently. During this time, Shu bought a good luck charm for her so that she could pass her exams. And at that moment they both believed that they loved each other and had no friends. Christmas is coming and Miyamura can't celebrate it with Hori's family, which makes everyone very upset. He needs to do a favor at work. Toru decides that he doesn't want to date Yoshikawa because he just likes her, which shocks his friends. One day, Yuki asks to visit Toru to play a video game. He agrees with her, but remembers that he wanted to distance himself from her and refuses. However, then he quickly changed his mind and they went to him. Upon arrival, they ran to his room as Toru didn't want anyone to see that he had brought a girl. There were several awkward moments in the room. Toru locked the door and began to take off his tie as usual, but Yuki was thinking about something else. At that moment, the housekeeper tried to burst into the room, trying to impose her hospitality. It was decided to treat them to cake and tea. The woman looked at the guy arrogantly and went to the kitchen for a cake, which she later brought to them. Rami at this time decided to invite Kakeru for Christmas, but one problem arose, because of which he categorically did not agree to come. She had a collection of insects at home, and he was afraid and hated insects. However, he agreed to come, trying to overcome his fears for the sake of love. At Christmas, Miyamura promised to bring a cake for Hori's family, but he could not stay long, although everyone really asked. But he stayed for a cup of tea. Then it was time to leave, and the family became so attached to him that they did not want to let him go. And then Hori said that she would accompany him home so that they could leave the guy. She came out straight in the clothes she was wearing at home and went with Miyamura. Hori understood that this was her last year at school, and no one knew where life would take them. On the way, she said that she didn't care that graduation was coming up. She always wants to be with him and make him happy. Miyamura reciprocated, and after a second turned to her. He shouted throughout the street for her to marry him. Hori was very embarrassed, but it was clear from her eyes that she agreed. Graduation is coming up, and almost everyone's lockers are still unorganized. On the last day, they will have to carry all their belongings home. Yuki had the most of these things. After finishing, Hori and Miyamura went straight home. From fatigue, the girl quickly fell asleep, and the guy sat down next to her, looked at her and thought. After all, he got to know her better because her younger brother got into trouble and Miyamura took him home. But then he thought about it, and if this had not happened, they would not have met. Hori then woke up and asked Miyamura what he was thinking about. He said that there are many coincidences in his life. It turns out that this is fate. On the eve of graduation, he thought about this often. If he had not helped Soto then, he would never have met Hori, would not have become friends with Toru, would not have stopped hiding from society, and would always be alone. But now he has everything, and yet it so happened that he met friends and a girl, and his life changed from scratch. Graduation day has arrived. The ceremony takes place and Kakeru gives the floor. He was very worried. There was silence, and he was about to start speaking when Miyamura sneezed all over the assembly hall, and everyone laughed. After the opening words, Kakeru decided to catch up with Miyamura out of anger that he ruined everything, but was unable to catch him. Miyamura ran to the roof, rested, and thought again. He thought about the past and how often he had come here before. He imagined himself in the past and talked to him about the present. He saw the difference and how happy he is now. Now he can let go of the past with a light heart and no longer run from it. At this time, a classmate interrupted him and called him down, but Miyamura had already finished and followed him, leaving his past on the roof. Hori was waiting for him somewhere below. When he arrived, he immediately saw Kyosuke, Hori's father. He immediately recognized Miyamura and called him to take a photo, and everyone immediately thought that Miyamura was his son. And then Hori ran up from behind and started chasing her father away. She didn't expect to see him here. At this time, Shu was talking with his friends and his sister Motoko approached him. She shyly asked him to come home early. Usually her brother was calm around her, but around his friends he acted cheerful and energetic. My sister was shocked by this behavior but quickly accepted it. Miyamura and Hori had already left to celebrate their graduation at that moment. As they walked together, Miyamura began to think again. He felt grateful to Hori for making him happy and thought about how to make her happy. He loves her and she loves him too. The school decided to go on a field trip after graduation. Groups of friends were given rooms in which to stay, and the next day everyone went for a walk and examined the area. The day was very eventful and they enjoyed it. And in the evening everyone went to wash, girls separately from boys. Miyamura hid his tattoos and did not want to bathe in a public shower, but he was lucky enough to meet Hori, who had no one in her room, and he washed with her. One day people began to look closely at Miyamura because it was strange that he always wore several layers of clothing and never changed his clothes in front of others. And Ayasaki even suggested that he was a girl. The next day they had to go home. Since it was summer, it was customary to go to the pool during physical education, and on the last day everyone had to do it. Kakeru did not want to do this because of his thin figure, and this embarrassed him greatly, and Miyamura because of the tattoos and piercings. They tried to avoid bathing for a long time and even said that Miyamura was menstruating and Kakeru's arm hurt. But instead of physical education, they were forced to clean the pool, while others had fun in the water and wondered why they didn't go swimming. But for them it was better than exposing their flaws or what they wanted to hide. Autumn came and I had to go back to school. Competitions were announced at school, and it so happened that the friends found themselves against each other. But nevertheless, they still helped each other, and this surprised many. Sakura was a bad dancer and participated in the support group. Because of this, she was very afraid of embarrassing herself, especially in front of Yuki. Yashikawa was her rival, but he helped her in this and Sakura was no longer so afraid. And Hori was against Miyamura, but she helped him in the 100-meter dash and Toru in the relay, and Sakura taught Ayasaki and Kakero how to cook. The guys prepared diligently for this day. One day, Hori was sitting and drawing a poster for this special day, and she was cold. A guy she knows comes up to her, gives her a jacket to keep her warm, and leaves. She continued to draw, and at that moment Miyamura approaches her and notices the jacket. He gave her his, sat on the guy's jacket and began to watch what Kyouko was writing and drawing. This made her even warmer because the jacket was warm from his body. Seeing this guy coming towards them for a jacket, Miyamura quickly put everything in its place. The guy took the jacket and was surprised that it was warm. In the end, she just lay on Hori's lap. But in fact, Miyamura was sitting on it. Sports day has arrived and its start has been announced. Hori had to run at speed. Kyouko was Ayasaka's rival. For motivation, Rumi said that if she beat Hori, Miyamura would become her boyfriend. Hori got angry and ran at full speed, even tearing down all the obstacles. Miyamura began to shout words of encouragement to her, but forgot that they were rivals. Hori got distracted by this and ended up running last. In the support group, the girls performed quickly. Sakura was terribly worried, but danced as best she could. The school really liked this performance, everyone applauded and watched with open mouths. Sakura felt like she had done it and that was it. She no longer had fear because she had overcome it. Ayasaki and even Yoshikawa said that she was magnificent and danced better than anyone. Next, a woman approached Miyamura and asked to take part in one of the competitions instead of one person who could not come. He would agree, and so it was that he fought Hori one-on-one. They had to run a distance, pick up a note and complete the task that was written there. They were surprised by each other and because of this they took a long time to complete the tasks. They eventually ran up to Kakeru and dragged him to the finish line. He was confused and resisted, but all these two were stronger. It turned out that Kyouko had a task to bring the chairman of the study council, who was Kakero, and Miyamura had a task to bring the thinnest guy. The next task was to sit on the shoulders of a person from the team and in the same position pull off the bandage from the opponent's head. Miyamura was against Kakero. The chairman of the study council was persistent, but Miyamura told him that someone was sitting on his shoulder and he turned away, causing him to lose. After the competition, Miyamura looked at his burnt nose, and when he came out, he saw Hori in a cheerleader costume. He was embarrassed, but the girl said that the girls wanted to take a group photo. He called her sweet and beautiful, which made her also embarrassed and ran away, calling him a fool. One day Miyamura fell asleep in Hori's house. They spread a blanket on the table and fell asleep, covering themselves with it. Then they woke up at night and realized that their legs were tangled in their sleep. Father, Soto, Kyouko, and Miyamura. In a panic and with difficulty, they untangled themselves. Meanwhile, Hori's father decided to go outside. There he met Kakero and recognized him. After all, he had known Kyosuke since childhood, and his father dragged him to his home. There, Miyamura and Kyouko were surprised by the sudden appearance of the school's traitor. Well, he told everything. It turns out that Kyouko and Kakero knew each other since childhood and even went to the same kindergarten. Then Miyamura fell asleep again, and messages began to arrive on his phone. Kyouko saw them and noticed that the messages were of lovers. In fact, this was written by Shingo and he just accidentally sent this message not to his girlfriend, but to Miyamura. But Hori thought about something completely different and began to get angry and jealous. She hit the sleeping Miyamura and lay down on the floor. He didn't understand what was happening and simply offered her a tangerine, but she didn't say anything. He then kissed her to calm her down and spoke to her. The next day, at the store, they met Kakeru's father and invited him to visit. It was Kyosuke's old friend. Upon arrival, Kakeru's father said that he forbade meeting girls, but Kakeru was already in love with Rumi and was hiding it. Then Kyosuke began to reproach his friend because he believed that he was limiting his son too much, and they began to have a verbal altercation. They immediately remembered their school years and what they did there, and then father and son went home. The next day, Hori ate tangerines while Miyamura read a magazine. He said that if she ate too many tangerines, her nails would turn yellow, which is what happened. She gave one piece of tangerine directly to the guy's mouth, and then he began to lick her fingers to wash off the citrus stains. Shu found out that Motoko liked one boy, Kitahiro, and called their home phone. Shu began aggressively asking questions about him. He didn't like the fact that some guy was involved in his sister's life. Shu consulted with his friends about this and they advised him to relax and, on the contrary, make friends with him. When Kitaharu came to visit them, Shu insisted that he sit next to him at that moment and his sister tried to shoo him away, but she could not do anything about it. The guy came to visit them a couple of times and Motoko noticed that the classmate liked her brother and seemed to be visiting because of him, and this made her very upset. The next day, Shu overslept for school and was almost late. He took the bread into his mouth and ran to school. On the way, he met Yuki, who was also running with bread in her mouth. They decided to go to school together because they were late anyway. Toru was cut out from behind them with an onigiri in his hands. He was also late. Then the three of them went to school and ate on the way. Then Miyamura ran up to them from behind, who was also eating on the way and was also late. When they arrived at school, they learned that older students actually had to come later. They were told this in class, but their friends forgot about it. On this day, younger school children came to inspect the school, so the friends went to buy themselves some food. On the way, Shu saw Kitahara among the 8th graders. He didn't want to be noticed for obvious reasons. Toru and the others gave him away. Shu shouted at him in excitement, and the teacher ran up behind him and hit him on the head. The guys wanted to make friends with Kitahara, but not with Shu. The boy even asked if Shu had a girlfriend, which made everyone almost laugh. Eventually, the teacher chased them all away and they left. They discussed this situation, and his friends advised him to become friends. Toru, Miyamura, and Shu spent the night at Kakero's. It so happened that Kakero did not figure out where he would sleep, but had already put the sleeping guests to bed. While he was thinking, Shu woke up, went to the toilet, and met Kakero. Shu immediately woke everyone up, and they began to think about where they could put Kakero, and it was decided to put him with the sleeping Miyamura on top, since there was no room below. Then he remembered how Miyamura did not want to take off his top part of his clothes under any circumstances, and he wondered why and tried to lift his t-shirt. Shu then went upstairs to get the phone and saw this situation. Kakero began to make excuses, but Shu didn't really believe him. With this, they woke up Toru, and he suggested lying downstairs. The guys realized late that they could have moved the table and there would have been more space. The next day, Kakero continued trying to find out Miyamura's secret, but was unsuccessful. Toru knew everything, so he helped Miyamura keep the secret. Reimi didn't believe she would pass the test with a score of over 60, but she wasn't going to try. But Sakura wanted to give her motivation and said that she would buy her favorite cookies if she passed the tests. Rami was happy about this, but did not agree. She still didn't pass the tests, but Sakura still bought her cookies just like that, out of friendship. The girl was surprised by her action, but she accepted the cookie, and they both ate it. Sakura loves reading manga and has finished reading all the chapters that have been released. She was looking forward to the new volume, but when she arrived at the store, she saw that everything was sold out. Akane then appears with the latest manga. He gave it to Sakura and said he would watch another one. That's how she found out that Akane also reads manga. Over the next few days, they discussed the manga, characters, and plot. Thus, they began to get closer. One day Miyamura was walking home, and on the way a red scarf fell out of the school window. Sawada picked it up, and the guy realized that her scarf had been thrown away on purpose. He looked at these girls who had committed this act and whispered something that scared them. Sawada and Miyamura went home together and she said that they didn't see eye to eye. The next day, Sawada's classmates wanted to hang up a poster inviting them to the drawing club. We didn't know where to hang it, so we hung it next to the posters and posters of the 11th graders. This was prohibited, but nothing could be done. Sawada walked over to fix the loose corner of the piece of paper and was noticed by the head of the study council. She asked not to take it off, but in the end she had to take it off anyway. But they hung it on another wall, and the poster remained hanging. The next day, the girls approached Sawada and started asking him about the day before. A classmate saw her rehanging the poster, but it produced more results than they expected. It was a normal frosty day, and Akane was on the bus heading home. But that day he was detained, and he didn't know about it. Then Rami and Kiko decided to tell him about it. They acted out a scene and conveyed the information to him, treating him to cookies with cocoa. The next day, his class declared a no-late week because many students were late. Therefore, Akane began to have problems sleeping. After all, before he could not go to bed, then he got up too early. He got used to his sleep schedule, but he couldn't get used to the new movie and his friends had to wake him up in the morning. Then one day, at the drink machine, Kakero asked Akane why he was so polite to him, but was easier to talk to his friends. He replied that it was a habit, and he always communicates in a simple way with those he likes. Kakero was offended, and Akane realized that he had said something stupid and began to make excuses. All day Kakero walked around in mourning and thought about this situation. He told his friends everything and it bothered him greatly. Then every time he met Akane, he began to communicate with him differently. But Kakero assured him not to force himself, although it still bothered him because he wanted to be closer to Akane. They advised him to be himself and behave more simply and even demonstrated this. But he didn't succeed, it's not in his character. In the end, everything remained in its place. Teacher Yasuda fell asleep at work and 2 schoolgirls braided his hair while he slept. No one in the class dared to tell him about this. But Yuki was late for class and saw the teacher like this. She couldn't stand it and started laughing. Yuki was the only one who told him about the hairstyle. The whole class couldn't help but laugh too. Later, Yasuda went to the staff room and wanted to get the key to one of the offices. But in the end he got to the chemistry teacher and he went to him. The absent-minded teacher thought that he had put the keys back, but he put them in his pocket. Later it turned out that his pockets were full of holes and all the keys fell out. Yuki offered to help him and sew his pockets. They went to a separate place where Yuki started sewing. Toru and Kikero looked out the window and watched what was happening. Toru began to envy the chemistry teacher, although he was not that close to Yuki. While she was sewing up the pockets, she asked him to show his hands so she could see the lines and folds on his hands. Later, Toru asked what Yuki was doing in the cabin and why she asked the teacher to show her hands. Yuki told him that she was looking at the patterns on them and they both started looking at Toru's hands. The guys often made fun of teacher Yasuda and communicated with him as equals. Although he grumbled, he loved his students, especially the girls. Later it happened that the teacher did not notice how he locked Hori and Kikero in the classroom. They were sleeping at their desks, so the teacher did not notice them. When he came back to the office, they had already woken up. He began to question them about what they were doing in this office and began to hint at indecent behavior. He even almost forced them to undress when the teacher came in and began to scold Yasuda for such thoughts and actions, and Hori and Kikero were sent home. The next day the teacher became kind and behaved as carefully as possible so that the students did not even recognize him. But the next day he was back to normal. Miyamura was often watched by his classmate Wadabe and he liked him very much. He even tried to make friends with him and it seems that it even worked out. After talking with his classmate, Miyamura went to Kyoko's house. When she arrived she started smelling it and said it smelled like Wadabe and she didn't like it. Hori was jealous of Miyamura. After this incident, he began to think more and more about how she did it, and he began to train himself to remember smells too. He smelled Shindo and remembered his scent, but he will have to remember the smells every time, and this is confusing. When Miyamura approached Hori again, the girl again smelled the scent of another person. She was jealous because she saw how his classmate treated the guy, even though he didn't even touch the man. As a result, she hit him in the face and then, not noticing the wall, crashed into it and also received a scratch on her face. Miyamura didn't want to apologize to her because it wasn't his fault. That's why they didn't talk for a long time. Then Hori began to cry and began to blame herself for her behavior. Miyamura was very kind and loved Kyouko, so he approached her and told her about it. He apologized to her anyway and they made up. The next day, Miyamura came to school wearing a sweatshirt, although they couldn't wear anything else except their school uniform. Hori followed him, sniffing his new clothes. She wasn't mad at him because she didn't want to fight again. The next day, Miyamura returned in uniform. Hori took him to a corner and smelled him, saying that Miyamura now had his natural scent, which she always liked. And yesterday there was a strange smell, but he explained that the sweatshirt he wore yesterday belonged to Shindo and it was his smell. He then walked over and kissed Hori on the lips and they walked to school together. Valentine's Day is coming and everyone is getting ready to give each other gifts. Hori initially did not plan to give anything to Miyamura since she does not know how to make sweets and the Miyamura family had their own candy store. However, the girls persuaded her, saying that Miyamura would be happy with any gift from her. So she decided to try making something with her own hands. After consulting with Sekira and receiving a cookbook, Hori tried making chocolate for the first time. She shared the result with family and friends. Not everyone liked it, but she still decided to make it again and give it to Miyamura. Sawada also wanted to give Hori chocolate and consulted Miyamura about the packaging. She also helped a classmate who wanted to give Shu a chocolate, but was shy and didn't even know his name. Sawada approached Ira, found out his preferences and helped the girl prepare a gift. And Ira was in mourning because he thought that Sawada wanted to give him chocolate, but she refused him. On this special day, Miyamura invited Hori over and treated her to a chocolate cake for Valentine's Day. She was delighted, but at the same time became even more worried about the gift for Miyamura, considering that he is an excellent cook and she is not. But she had nothing to lose and despite her excitement, she gave him her chocolate, which he almost completely ate. Her gift truly made Miyamura happy. At the end of the day, when Sawada had already given Hori her gift and she was satisfied, the girl returned to class and saw her classmate. She was never able to give Shu chocolate, getting scared at the last moment. In order not to disappoint her classmate, Sawada suggested giving chocolate to each other as a sign of friendship. Miyamura was visiting Hori, and Hori's father told him about his acquaintance with Kyoko's mother. He described her sweetness as a flower, and himself as a confident guy who was liked by all the girls, although he was a good student and did not behave like a bully. But this woman was especially dear to him. At school, he was a friend of Kekuero's father and even served on the student council. Memories of this love story interested Miyamura, and his father warned him about Kyoko's fiery temper and her tendency to hold long-term grudges. But even after such a warning, not even a day had passed before Kyouko became angry again about something. One day she asked her father for a t-shirt, but he refused her, mentioning that she ate too much matcha on New Year's Day and became fat. This infuriated her, and she began trying on her younger brother's clothes to prove that she would even fit into his things. From time to time the girl lost her temper and took out her anger on her younger brother or scolded him for petty pranks. The always calm Miyamura tried to calm her down and resolve all conflicts. Soto even offered to help her wash the dishes, but she feared for his safety and yelled at him. This made the boy cry, and Miyamura calmed him down. But then Kyouko also began to cry and Miyamura began to console the two of them. Then the guy talked to Kyouko, and she said that she wanted Miyamura to always be on her side, although he usually was. And the guy supported her and the girl felt better. In the morning, Miyamura went to Hori's house to go to school together. But when he arrived, she was very sleepy and practically slept while walking. Her father said she spent the night watching horror films. He didn't like it either, and decided to make the guy some coffee while Hori got ready. A lot of time passed, but Kyouko was still missing, so Miyamura went to check on her. The girl fell asleep again right next to the bed and the guy began to help her get ready. He braided her hair and helped her pack her bag. Then the girl went to the toilet and Miyamura remained waiting downstairs. Then a scream was heard from the toilet. The girl was shocked by her new hairstyle, but they both decided that the result was beautiful, even though the guy didn't know how to do hair. At school, everyone noticed Hori's new hairstyle and she received many compliments, which made her like her new look even more. Then friends carried heavy boxes to class. Almost everyone brought boxes except Kekwero. Physically, he was the weakest of all in the group of friends, which surprised many. It turned out that he was even weaker than Yoshikawa, who was carrying rather heavy boxes. Somewhere in the boxes they found a postcard with a beach and the friends remembered that they wanted to go to the beach someday. And then Kyouko began to remember the time before she met this company and Miyamura. She often crossed paths with Sakura, Ake, and Iura. Toru was still in love with Kyouko at the time and did not confess to her. And over time, they all became friends and began to communicate. But coincidences and accidents brought them together. If chance didn't exist, they might not even know about each other. This is exactly what happened to Miyamura. He and Kyouko met by chance. And if this had not happened, then Miyamura would have been left completely alone, without friends, without a girlfriend, without love, and would not have been able to let go of his past.